So, what happens when your absolute best-in-class training program is secretly being sabotaged from the inside? Well, that's the exact challenge that the global construction leader Hilti was facing. They had this world-class program, right? But an invisible machine of just manual, tedious work was threatening to break the whole thing. Let's dive in and see how they fixed it.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to see what made Hilti's onboarding the gold standard to begin with. Then we'll get into the paradox, how that very success created a pretty crippling problem. From there, we'll look at the specific fix, check out the impressive results, and then wrap it all up with a huge takeaway for any L&D team out there.
So, let's talk about what was at stake here. To really get it, we need to start by looking at the very thing Hilti was so determined to protect. This wasn't just any onboarding program. It was a core part of the company's DNA. Yeah, this was not your typical, welcome to the company slideshow. Not at all. For Hilti, onboarding is a direct reflection of their brand. It's designed to build this deep sense of culture and collaboration, making sure every single new hire understands the high standards that they promise their customers. This wasn't just a program, it was a core part of their identity.
And you can just see how intentionally complex this was. This wasn't some one-day workshop. It was a whole multi-phase journey for new hires, weaving together peer learning with a mix of digital and live sessions. The big idea here? It was sophisticated and high-touch on purpose because it was all focused on driving real business outcomes.
But, and here's the twist, as Hilti got bigger, the very same complexity that made this program so powerful also became its greatest weakness. It was creating this massive, hidden logistical nightmare behind the scenes. And this slide just lays out the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you have this incredible high-performance learning program. But on the other, the administrative machine running it was completely manual. We're talking spreadsheets, endless email chains, clunky calendar invites. It was like having a Formula One car run by a pit crew using wrenches from a home toolkit. Just wasn't going to work.
And look, this wasn't just a small inconvenience. It was creating real problems that were threatening the quality of the entire experience. You had people enrolled in the wrong sessions, classes getting rescheduled at the last minute, and all the while coordinators were just buried in admin work trying to keep the wheels from falling off. The program just could not scale reliably.
So, Hilti had this big realization. The problem wasn't their learning design. That part was world-class. The problem was the operational backbone. They needed a totally new category of tool, one that was purpose-built to manage that invisible machine of administration.
And that solution was a training management system, or a TMS. Now, it is so important to understand this is not just another LMS. An LMS, manages content. A TMS is laser-focused on managing complexity, all the logistics, the scheduling, the communication that makes these kinds of high-touch programs actually work.
Okay, here's probably the simplest way to think about it. The LMS is the system of record. It's the library that holds all the books. But the TMS? That's the system of orchestration. It's the event planner, making sure all the right people and all the right resources are in the right place at exactly the right time.
So, what really happened when Hilti plugged in a dedicated TMS to act as this new coordination layer? Well, let's just say the results were pretty dramatic. They were able to go in and directly target their biggest pain points. They used standardized templates, which made building new programs super fast and consistent. They had intelligent scheduling logic to prevent conflicts before they even happened. And, maybe best of all that participant communication, the invites, the reminders, it was all automated. They literally went from reactive firefighting to proactive strategic planning.
So, what was the bottom line? The impact was immediate and it was so clear. They saw roughly a 50%, that's 50, reduction in the administrative friction and all that manual effort it took to run their programs.
And this chart, wow, it just makes that impact crystal clear. Just look at the massive drop in time their teams were spending wrestling with spreadsheets and emails. All of that recovered time could now be put back into what actually matters, creating amazing learning experiences. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. What is the big lesson from Hilti's story for anyone out there running complex, really important training programs? The lesson is actually pretty simple, but it's profound. You can have the most brilliant learning strategy in the world, but it can be completely undermined by a weak operational foundation. That invisible machine of coordination is just as critical as the content itself. And hey, this wasn't just some internal win they were celebrating. Hilti's whole approach was recognized externally with a really prestigious Brandon Hall Group Award. And what that did was validate a key idea. They had solved a widespread, yet often overlooked, challenge that affects the entire learning industry.
So, we'll leave you with this to think about. What's the invisible machine that's running your most important training programs? Is it a well-oiled engine that's pushing you forward, or is it a tangled mess of manual processes that's actually holding you back?